that we should not be pouring more money, more troops into Afghanistan, believing we can defeat the Taliban, create a legitimate, effective, stable state.
Maybe we should look at the speech Obama gave in March. You were advising them already then.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good morning. Please be seated. The additional troops that we deployed have already increased our training capacity. And later this spring, we will deploy approximately 4,000 U.S. troops to train Afghan security forces. For the first time, this will truly resource our effort to train and support the Afghan army and police. Every American unit in Afghanistan will be partnered with an Afghan unit, and we will seek additional trainers from our NATO allies to ensure that every Afghan unit has a coalition partner. We will accelerate our efforts to build an Afghan army of 134,000 and a police force of 82,000 so that we can meet these goals by 2011. So I want the American people to understand that we have a clear and focused goal: to disrupt, dismantle, and defeat al-Qaeda in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and to prevent their return to either country in the future. That's the goal that must be achieved. That is a cause that could not be more just. And to the terrorists who oppose us, my message is the same: we will defeat you.
So what went wrong during dinner with Hillary Clinton?
Well, I mean, clearly a lot, right? Because this is exactly not what I think the policy should be. Obama there is basically laying out a strategy which says we have one very narrow objective: counterterrorism, defeating al-Qaeda. And that the way to get there is huge, big maximalist intervention: more troops, more civilians, agricultural specialists, state building, counterinsurgency, regional stability, development. You have to do all these things in order to defeat al-Qaeda. I think this is an illusion. He has some idea in his head that all these different things that they're doing are somehow logically connected in very elaborate ways. So he will say, you can't have security without development. You can't have development without security. Or he'll say, their development is connected to our security. Or he will say, you get the Taliban if you have poverty. You get al-Qaeda if you have a failed state. You get al-Qaeda if you have a rogue state. You get al-Qaeda if you work with Pakistan. I mean, and all these different things are connected together unconvincingly, because, of course, none of this is true. I mean, it's possible to have a stable state and still have an insurgency. It's possible to have an unstable state but no insurgency. It's possible to have terrorists in a functioning state, or to have an unstable state without terrorists. I mean, all this stuff is... But within the American system, there is a very ethnocentric vision, basically, in the end. He begins, and this is what makes me sad, with a very negative account of Afghanistan. Basically, we make Afghans out, corrupt, drugs, insecurity, etc. And this makes us feel good. We're being realistic. We're, talking the truth about Afghanistan. But we don't really have any positive vision for what the country is going to be. We don't know how to say we'd like the country to be a little bit more stable, prosperous, and humane in 20 or 30 years' time than it is today. What do we want Afghanistan to look like? It's a very poor country. So is it going to look like Pakistan? Is it going to look like Iran? Is it going to look like Uzbekistan? Or is it some completely unimagined state that's never been seen to exist anywhere? And what has any of this got to do with US or European national security? I mean, my guess is that if you were to watch this in 20 or 30 years' time, you would feel a real sense of sadness. You would feel, why is this guy doing this? Why is he wasting his time and his energy in this way?
But he's a very bright person. He has loads of advisors. The idea that Afghanistan is a corrupt state is not a... Is that starting point already wrong? Or you should...
No, this is true, right? Afghanistan had a lot of corruption in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a very poor country, like other 40 or 50 other poor countries in the world. Sometimes it's similar to Nepal. Sometimes it's similar to Chad or Niger. Right? It's a troubled, fragile, developing country. But the question is, what do you do about that? And I think the last thing you do is you say, this is the front line on the war on terror, failure is not an option, we must pump in 120,000 troops, we must bring it on, we must sort this out. What does it mean to sort out a country like Nepal or Chad or Afghanistan? What it means is 20 or 30 years of slowly investing in some projects which you can do, some will fail, small gestures, maybe a little bit of support on this, support on that, understanding that there are conservative religious people, there's a strong desire for independence, the suspicion of foreigners, that this is about politics. We don't, as internationals, have the recipe. Obama's fundamental mistake is summed up in his phrase, yes, we can. The answer in Afghanistan is no, we cannot.
And you told them that, but they didn't get it? Or?
Well, it's impossible, really, for them to get. I mean, there's something about the policy psyche. They say, no, but we have an obligation. You know, are you saying we want to let the Taliban take over the country? Do you want to give up on Afghan women? Do you want al-Qaeda to come back? Do you want this country to be poor? What are you saying? And what I'm saying is, ought implies can. You don't have a moral obligation to do what you cannot do. Please stop talking about your nightmares, your fantasies about how Afghanistan is the most dangerous and terrible place in the world. Let's try to look at realistically, what can we achieve here? And probably we find, and this is my thing, that we can do less than we pretend, but more than we fear. I think these people, they sound like optimists, but really in their heart of hearts, they're pessimists. Because they realize that the plan they're proposing is completely unrealistic. And that they're really doing it, in the end, for political reasons, I suppose.
I was just getting to that. There are political reasons to frame the problem in a certain way and to frame the solution in a certain way. You know this because you've been outside of the system always, and you've been in touch with, on the highest level with people in the system. You decided, I think, somewhere this summer to run for Parliament,
yeah.
for office in Britain. Isn't that the scary thing, that suddenly you're in the system, and as much as you know, because you've been sleeping in those mud houses and you've been seeing all the problems, and you have this very clear analysis, won't it be sad for you that suddenly you're in the system and you have to, let's say, adapt to the rules in the system?
Well, I want to know. I mean, I want to understand. I want to try. I mean, I want to see why it's like this. I mean, maybe, you know, you talk to me in a year's time, I'll come back and say, okay, all right, I accept I was naive. I have to...
No, I'm not saying you're naive.
Maybe I have to do this. But I don't believe he has to do this. I think there was another choice. I don't think he is completely the prisoner of a political system and a destiny which forces him to send more and more troops and money to Afghanistan. I think it's possible for him to stand up in front of the American people and say, listen, we're going to have a moderate, light, long-term presence in this country. It's not as dangerous as we pretend. We'll do what we can to help the Afghans. We'll do what we can to protect U.S. national security, but we have other priorities around the world. I think this is perfectly possible for him.
And you're also, you will be the politician who can change the system from the system itself?
Well,
or change?
Presumably not, right? Presumably...
I hope no. I'm putting all my hope in you. No, really, I hope you're going to be that person.
I guess if you were betting, you would say the chance of this happening is very small, that I will fail. But I certainly believe that what one wants is a politician who knows what they believe first, knows what the policy should be, and then thinks about how to sell it. Not thinking about how to sell it first and then working out.
But that's one of the problems, because these are very complex problems.
Right.
These are not things you can talk to